Imagine America, right around the turn of the century. Industries weren't just growing, they were literally exploding, being built from the ground up.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Driven by these, well, larger-than-life figures, people with incredible vision and, frankly, sheer willpower.
exactly. These legends who didn't just play the game, they practically invented it as they went.
They saw opportunities where others didn't, built massive enterprises, often from, well, very little, changed the whole landscape.
And today we're doing a deep dive into one of those guys, Charles Schwab. Now we need to be super clear here, not the finance guy you might know today.
No, no, we're going way back. The original Charles Schwab, the American steel magnate.
That's the one. A name totally tied to that whole era of, massive industrial growth.
Right. And we're mainly looking at an article from Entrepreneur Post, Charles Schwab's Life Story Legends. It gives us a really good window into his ambition, his innovations, the whole package.
So that's our mission today. Unpack that source, pull out the key stuff about his life, the rise from basically nothing, the huge impact he had on steel, the controversies too, and what kind of legacy we're left with.
Yeah, we want to get beyond just the timeline, what really made him tick, what made him so powerful, and let's be honest, sometimes pretty polarizing.
What can we learn from his story today? That's the question.
What does his story mean for you listening right now?
Exactly. So yeah, buckle up. Let's jump into the world of Charles Schwab and see what insights we can find.
Okay, so to really get Schwab, you got to start where the source starts, his beginnings. Born in 1862, Williamsburg, Pennsylvania.
And the article really emphasizes this, son of a blacksmith.
Right. Humble roots. Not exactly born with a silver spoon.
That contrast is pretty stark, isn't it? Blacksmith's son to
Yeah.
well, we'll get to that. But it shows you how far he climbed.
Definitely grounds the story. And his way into the steel industry wasn't, through connections. He got a clerk job at Pennsylvania Steel Company. He was only 22.
Wow, 22. Just a clerk. Starting right at the bottom.
Literally pushing paper, you imagine. But the source makes it clear. He didn't stay there long.
No, it talks about how his hard work, his talent, just propelled him upwards. He rose through the ranks right there at Pennsylvania Steel.
Worked his way up until eventually he became president of that company.
Which is already impressive, right? Clerk to president.
Hugely impressive, but that wasn't even the peak. The really big leap, the one that made him a national figure, that was 1901.
Okay, what happened then?
He gets appointed president of the brand new United States Steel Corporation, U.S. Steel.
And U.S. Steel wasn't just like another steel company, was it?
Oh, absolutely not. This was a monster. It was formed by merging several of the biggest steel companies out there. Think Carnegie Steel, Federal Steel.
So it was this massive consolidation.
The biggest of its kind, really. And suddenly, Schwab's running arguably the most powerful industrial company in the world.
Wow. And the source says once he got that job, he had this laser focus.
Yeah. Relentless pursuit of efficiency. That's the phrase that comes through.
And the goal was pretty clear.
Make U.S. Steel the biggest, the most productive, the absolute leader globally. Efficiency was the key to that scale in his mind.
Okay, so you've got this incredible story arc. Humble beginnings, hard work, ambition lands him at the very top. But his impact wasn't just about, managing a huge company, right? There was more to it.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting technologically speaking. The source highlights a major contribution, the development of the Bethlehem process for making steel.
The Bethlehem process. Okay, the article says it was faster, more efficient, more profitable, but what was it? Why was it better?
Well, the simple version, based on the source, is that it fundamentally changed the speed and cost of making steel. The existing methods were, slower, used more resources.
Right.
The Bethlehem process found ways to produce high-quality steel much faster and cheaper. It was a breakthrough in the actual production method.
Ah, okay. So not just tweaking things, but a real step change in how steel was made. It changed the basic math of it.
Precisely. And that technical innovation was directly tied to his business success and U.S. Steel's dominance. He wasn't just a manager. He understood the making of steel.
So he championed these kinds of, factory floor advancements.
Absolutely. He saw that innovation there was just as vital as boardroom strategy, maybe more so. That drive for efficiency wasn't just talk. It was about tangible process improvements.
That's a really key takeaway, connecting that deep technical understanding, or at least the support for it, to that massive success.
Yeah, but interestingly, the source also paints a picture that's not just about being a hard-driving industrialist. There was another side.
Okay. Like what?
Philanthropy. The article makes a point of saying he was recognized for his charity work,
Yeah.
for wanting to, improve people's lives.
Hmm. That adds another layer.
Definitely. Says he was a generous donor, generally, to various causes. But he had specific interests, too.
Hmm.
Education and the arts come up. Seems he really valued those.
And there was one specific thing mentioned related to his own company, right?
Yes, the Bethlehem Steel Company Charitable and Benevolent Association. That stands out.
What did it do?
It was set up specifically to give financial help directly to employees who were struggling, who were in need.
Okay, that's quite specific. Using company resources to directly support the workforce seems, well, it suggests a level of care, doesn't it?
It does. It presents that side. But the source is also very direct about the fact that this existed alongside, well, other aspects of his leadership that drew a lot of fire.
Right, which leads us straight into the controversies, because the source is clear. Despite all the success, the innovation, even the charity, Schwab's story has its darker side.
Yeah, the article mentions his intense competitiveness, describes him as someone willing to do whatever it took to win, to achieve his goals.
That kind of drive often has a sharp edge.
It can.
Yeah.
And the biggest criticism the source points to is about his labor practices.
What does it say exactly?
It reports that many people at the time viewed his practices as cruel and inhumane. Strong words.
Okay, and we need to be really careful here. We're just reporting what the source, the Entrepreneur Post article, states about these criticisms. We're not adding our opinion or saying if it's true or false.
Exactly. It's crucial we just present the information as the source gives it to us. Impartiality is key when dealing with historical accounts like this, especially the tough parts.
And here's where it gets really complex, according to the article, this paradox.
Yeah, because even with these really harsh criticisms about how he treated labor being pretty well known.
His reputation didn't exactly suffer.
No, his reputation as this visionary leader, this brilliant businessman, it actually continued to grow. He was still widely respected, especially for what he did for the steel industry overall.
That's fascinating, isn't it? It really makes you think about how society weighs these things. Huge economic impact versus ethical concerns.
The source doesn't really try to resolve that tension. It just lays it out there for you to consider. He drove progress, built this giant, innovated.
While facing serious backlash for treatment of workers, it's not neat and tidy.
Not at all. He wasn't just a hero or a villain in the telling. He was, well, complicated. A product of his time, maybe, and his own fierce ambition.
And the source gives a few more details that sort of round out the picture of the man himself beyond just the big headlines.
Yeah, some interesting little nuggets. Like, he was apparently a huge reader.
Really? What did he read?
An avid learner, it says. Spent hours reading up on steelmaking management, things like that. So that drive for knowledge was real, feeding into the innovation we talked about.
Makes sense. It wasn't just gut instinct, it was informed. What else?
He was a great speaker, an accomplished orator,
Okay.
known for really captivating speeches.
Yeah.
And the source notes he used that skill deliberately to, inspire his employees, motivate them, a key leadership tool, regardless of the controversies.
And he knew the value of connections.
Oh, yeah. Member of the Cosmos Club in D.C., very prestigious, used it for networking with powerful people.
But not just formal networking?
No, he was also a big golfer, belonged to several clubs. And the article mentions he'd use golfing trips for business meetings, too, blurring the lines,
Business everywhere. Okay, going back to the giving side besides the employee fund.
The source also mentions he set up scholarships specifically for underprivileged students. Another concrete example of that philanthropic interest in education.
And then there's this one detail that feels almost modern.
Which one? The exercise thing.
Yeah, it says he believed in exercise, a healthy lifestyle, took daily walks.
And encouraged his employees to do it too. Believed it boosted productivity, reduced stress. This is kind of unexpected for a Gilded Age tycoon, right? Promoting wellness.
Totally unexpected. It shows a different kind of thinking about performance, maybe. Though, again, balanced against those labor practice criticisms.
It's all part of that complex picture. And the source also circles back to his constant push for the latest tech, always eager to adopt new innovations if they meant more efficiency, more profit.
Right, connecting back to the Bethlehem process and that core drive. It was ongoing.
And the source reiterates, despite the controversy, the toughness on employees, he was undeniably successful and respected in many circles.
And one last detail the source throws in about his personality despite the wealth.
Yeah, that he remained, or at least projected, humility, down to earth. admired for a simple lifestyle, and it says genuine concern for others. Which, again, you have to hold up against the other criticisms. It just adds to the puzzle.
He's definitely hard to pin down, not a caricature.
And that's why digging into these sources is valuable.
Yeah.
The reality is usually way more nuanced than the simple story.
Okay, so let's talk legacy. According to the source, what's the lasting impact of this Charles Schwab?
Well, his name, his story, it lives on. It's still associated with, innovation, entrepreneurship, that whole American ideal of hard work and determination paying off.
The article flat out credits him with changing the face of the steel industry.
Yeah, through his leadership, the techie champion, his sheer scale of operation, he fundamentally altered a core American industry, left a huge mark on the whole business landscape.
And the source concludes by saying he's still seen as an inspiration.
An inspiration for people striving for greatness, yes. But it's an inspiration that, as we've seen, comes with some pretty heavy baggage, some serious questions attached.
Okay, let's try and pull this all together. We've traced his path. Blacksmith's son, clerk, rises to lead the world's biggest steel company. We've seen the game-changing innovation like the Bethlehem process. We've touched on his philanthropy.
And we've had to confront the really serious criticisms, sourced from the article, about his labor practices. Immense success, but shadowed by ethical questions.
So as you've listened to this, what part of Schwab's story really sticks with you? Is it that incredible climb, that raw ambition?
Or maybe the focus on technical mastery, on efficiency above all else. Or even those surprising little details like the reading or the daily walks.
Or is it that central paradox?
Yeah.
The generous giver who is also seen by many as a harsh employer. How do you reconcile those two sides of the coin?
It really forces you to think about how we evaluate leaders, doesn't it? Especially historical ones.
Which leads us to our final thought, something for you to chew on. Schwab was, by all accounts from this source, a man of deep contradictions. He drove massive industrial progress, but faced severe ethical criticism for how he did it.
So the question is, when we look back at figures like him, how do we weigh that? Is it all about the final result, the factories built, the wealth created?
Or does the human cost, the ethical dimension of how that success was achieved, carry equal or even greater weight? What's the ultimate measure of a leader's impact, positive and negative? What can we really learn from the whole complex picture of Charles Schwab's legacy today? A lot to think about there.
Definitely. That was our deep dive into Charles Schwab based on the Entrepreneur Post article.